Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to another great and interesting topic here on the English Globe. I'm Adam, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Julia. We are so happy you're here with us today. Whether you're walking outside, studying at home, or traveling somewhere new, thank you for choosing to spend your time with us and improve your English listening skills through real conversations about real-world issues.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're diving into a very important and shocking topic that has caught the attention of the world. Recently, Russia made a big announcement that surprised many people and governments around the world. Russia has become the first major world power to officially recognize the Taliban government in Afghanistan. This is a very big move in international relations, and in today's podcast, we are going to explain what it means, why it matters, and how it could affect the world.
But before we jump deep into the details, we want to remind you to like this video and subscribe to the English Globe if you haven't already. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We publish English learning podcasts every day, and they are designed to help you practice listening, grow your vocabulary, and understand world news in simple English.
Also, we would love to know where you're listening from today. Are you in the Middle East, Europe, Africa, Asia, or maybe in the United States or Canada? Let us know in the comments below. We really enjoy hearing from all our amazing listeners around the world. And don't forget to share your opinions about today's topic as well. What do you think about Russia recognizing the Taliban government? Do you agree or disagree with this decision?
Now let's begin by helping everyone understand what today's topic is really about. To understand why Russia's decision is so important and controversial, we first need to talk about who the Taliban are, how they came to power, and why most countries around the world did not officially accept them as a legitimate government, at least not until now.
That's right, Adam. So, to begin with, we need to go back a little bit in history. Afghanistan has had a very complicated and difficult history over the last several decades. In the 1990s, a group called the Taliban took control of the country. They ruled Afghanistan with very strict laws based on their version of Islamic beliefs. Many people around the world criticized their rule, especially because of their treatment of women and minorities.
Then, after the attacks on the United States on September 11, 2001, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan and removed the Taliban from power. After that, for nearly 20 years, the U.S. and its allies supported a new Afghan government. But in 2021, the U.S. military left Afghanistan, and soon after, the Taliban returned and took control of the country once again. It happened very quickly, and the whole world watched in shock as the Afghan government collapsed.
Since then, the Taliban have been ruling Afghanistan again. But here's something important to understand. Just because a group controls a country does not mean that other countries recognize them as the official government. Recognition is a very big deal in international relations. It means a country is saying, "We accept you as the legitimate rulers, and we are ready to have official diplomatic relations with you."
Exactly. For the past few years, most countries around the world have refused to recognize the Taliban government. This is mostly because of concerns about human rights, especially the rights of women and girls, and worries that the Taliban might allow terrorist groups to grow again inside Afghanistan. But now, Russia has made a major move by officially recognizing the Taliban as the official government of Afghanistan. And that's the big headline today. World shocked. Russia becomes first to recognize Taliban rule.
This move has created strong reactions from many governments and experts around the world. Some say Russia is making a strategic decision. Others say it could be dangerous. Still, others wonder if more countries will now follow Russia and also recognize the Taliban. So, in this podcast, we are going to explore every part of this situation. We'll talk about who the Taliban are, what recognition means, why Russia made this decision, and how the world has reacted.
We will also look at what this means for the Afghan people, especially for women and children. And of course, We'll talk about how this could change relationships between powerful countries like the United States, China, and Russia. So stay with us, dear listeners. We promise to explain everything step by step in simple, clear English, so you can both understand the topic and improve your English at the same time.
Yes. And remember, if you like this type of content, where you learn English through real stories and world news, then please hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The English Globe. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us where you're listening from and share your opinion. Do you think it's a good idea to recognize the Taliban? Why or why not?
Now that we've introduced the topic and explained the background, in the next section, we're going to take a deeper look at the Taliban as a group, who they are, what they believe, and why they have been so controversial around the world. Julia, are you ready to explore this topic further?
I'm ready, Adam. Let's help our listeners understand everything in a simple, clear, and respectful way. See you in the next section, everyone. To truly understand why the world was shocked by Russia's recognition of the Taliban, we must first understand who the Taliban are, where they came from, and what they believe. The Taliban are a group of Islamic fighters who first became known in the early 1990s during the civil war in Afghanistan. They were mostly made up of religious students, many of whom had studied in Islamic schools in Pakistan, and their name actually comes from the word talib, which means student in Arabic.
Yes, Julia, and during the chaos that followed the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan in 1989, different warlords fought for control of the country. The Taliban rose up in the southern region, especially around the city of Kandahar, with a promise to bring peace and security by enforcing a strict version of Islamic law. Many Afghans were tired of the fighting, the corruption, and the lack of justice, so the Taliban gained support quickly. By 1996, they had taken control of the capital, Kabul, and most of the country.
Once in power, the Taliban established a government based on their interpretation of Islamic law. They banned many forms of entertainment, such as music and movies, and they required men to grow beards and wear traditional clothing. Most significantly, they placed very strict rules on women and girls. Women were not allowed to go to school or work, and they had to wear a full body covering called a burqa. These laws shocked the world and led to widespread criticism from human rights groups.
That's right, and many people saw the Taliban government as harsh and extreme. They were also accused of destroying cultural heritage, like when they blew up the ancient Buddha statues in Bamiyan in 2001. But the event that really brought them into the world's spotlight was their connection to Osama bin Laden and the terrorist group Al-Qaeda. After the September 11th attacks in the United States, the Taliban were accused of protecting bin Laden and refusing to hand him over to the U.S.
As a result, in late 2001, the United States and its allies launched a military operation in Afghanistan to remove the Taliban from power. Within a few months, the Taliban were defeated and a new government, supported by the West, was formed. However, the Taliban did not disappear. They went underground, especially in the mountainous regions along the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and they began a long insurgency against the new Afghan government and foreign troops.
For almost 20 years, the Taliban continued to fight. They carried out attacks against Afghan and international forces, as well as civilians. Over time, they regained strength and territory. Then, in 2020, the United States began peace talks with the Taliban in Doha, Qatar. These talks led to an agreement that promised the U.S. would withdraw its troops, and in return, the Taliban would stop attacking American forces and start negotiations with the Afghan government.
But unfortunately, those talks between the Taliban and the Afghan government did not succeed. After the US withdrawal in 2021, the Taliban quickly advanced across the country. Within weeks, they entered Kabul and took control of the government. Many people were surprised at how quickly the Afghan forces collapsed, and once again the Taliban were in power. However, the international community was unsure how to respond to this new reality.
Since then, The Taliban have claimed they are different from the past. They have promised to respect women's rights within Islamic law, and they have said they want good relations with other countries. But in practice, many of their old rules have returned. Girls have been banned from secondary schools, women have been told not to work in many sectors, and freedom of speech remains very limited. As a result, most countries have been very cautious about dealing with the Taliban.
That's true, Adam. The world has been watching and waiting to see if the Taliban would truly change. Many governments said they would not recognize the Taliban unless they showed real progress in human rights, education, and inclusive governance. So far, that hasn't happened in a big way. That's why Russia's decision to recognize the Taliban now is such a big deal. It goes against what most countries have done so far.
It also raises many questions. Has Russia seen something in the Taliban that others have not? Or is Russia just acting in its own interests? And what message does this send to the rest of the world? Before we answer those questions, we have to understand one more important concept, and that's diplomatic recognition. In the next section, we'll explain what it means when one country recognizes a government, and why this is such a powerful and controversial action in global politics.
Yes, this is a key point in international relations. Recognition is not just about saying hello or opening an embassy. It means accepting a government's legitimacy, and it can lead to deals, money, trade, and much more. So, if you're ready to dive deeper, join us in the next section, where we'll explain what recognition means and why Russia's move could change many things in Afghanistan and beyond.
Now that we've learned who the Taliban are and how they first came to power in the 1990s, let's talk about something more recent and very important: how they returned to power in 2021. This part of the story is truly shocking for many people around the world, especially because of how fast everything changed and how quickly the Afghan government collapsed after so many years of support from the international community.
Yes, Adam. After 2 decades of war, after spending trillions of dollars and losing many lives, both the United States and its allies were ready to leave Afghanistan. In February 2020, the US and the Taliban signed a peace agreement in Doha, Qatar. The deal said that American troops would leave the country, and in return the Taliban would stop attacks on US forces and begin peace talks with the Afghan government. But unfortunately, those talks between the Taliban and Afghan leaders did not go well.
That's right, Julia. The agreement gave the Taliban something very powerful: the chance to wait and prepare. As soon as US forces began to withdraw from Afghanistan in 2021, the Taliban began moving quickly across the country. They started taking control of towns and cities, often without firing a single bullet. Many Afghan soldiers surrendered or left their positions. In many cases, they gave up because they were not paid, they had no air support, and they had lost hope in their government.
And that's the sad truth. After years of corruption, poor leadership, and dependency on foreign aid, the Afghan government was not strong enough to stand on its own. In just a few short weeks, the Taliban captured major cities across the country. By August 15, 2021, they had reached Kabul, the capital. The president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, fled the country, and the government completely collapsed. It was one of the fastest takeovers in modern history.
Many people were shocked to see how fast the Taliban returned. Images from the Kabul airport went viral around the world. Thousands of people were trying to escape. Crowds filled the runway. People were climbing planes, hoping to flee before the Taliban took full control. The US and other countries rushed to evacuate their citizens and Afghan allies. But not everyone made it out. It was a moment of fear, panic, and deep sadness for the Afghan people and those who supported them.
Even though the Taliban promised that they would be different this time, many people inside and outside Afghanistan were deeply worried. Girls' schools began to close again. Women were told to stay home. Journalists were silenced. Former government workers and members of the military were hunted or went into hiding. People feared that the freedom and progress gained over the last 20 years would disappear. And for many, sadly, that is exactly what happened.
Since taking control in 2021, the Taliban have formed a government, but it is not recognized by most of the world. They call it the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. It is made up of senior Taliban leaders, most of whom were part of the original government in the 1990s. There are no women in power. There are no elections. And many officials are under international sanctions, which means they are not allowed to travel or access foreign bank accounts.
Because of this, the Afghan economy is in a deep crisis. After the Taliban returned, billions of dollars in foreign aid was stopped. The United States froze Afghanistan's central bank assets, which means the country lost access to money it needed to function. Banks closed or ran out of cash. Jobs disappeared. Prices went up. And more than half of the population now depends on humanitarian aid to survive. It is one of the worst economic collapses in the world today.
But even with all of these problems, the Taliban remain in power. They have not been removed. There is no strong opposition, and despite being isolated by most of the world, they continue to rule the country. Over the past 2 years, some countries have kept their embassies open in Kabul and have maintained limited contact with the Taliban. Countries like China, Iran, Pakistan, Qatar, and Russia have all chosen to talk with the Taliban in different ways.
But it's very important to understand that talking to the Taliban is not the same as recognizing them as the official government. Recognition means something much deeper. It means saying, yes, we see you as the legal rulers of this country, and we accept you fully as a government. It also opens the door for trade, aid, diplomacy, and official relations. And up until now, no major world power had made that move, until Russia decided to take the step and recognize the Taliban officially.
And that's what makes this story so important. Russia's decision is not just about Afghanistan. It could change how the world deals with the Taliban, and it could influence other countries to do the same. It could also affect how the United Nations handles aid and support, and it might even shift the balance of power in Central and South Asia. In the next section, we're going to look at the global response to the Taliban's return and how most countries have treated them since 2021.
Yes, and we'll talk about how international recognition works. Why is it such a big deal? What does it mean for normal people living in a country like Afghanistan? And why have most governments waited so long to make a decision? All of these questions are connected, and the answers will help us understand why Russia's move is so controversial. So stay with us, and we'll explore these questions together in the next section. Since the Taliban returned to power in August 2021, the world has watched with caution and concern. Most countries did not know how to respond to the sudden collapse of the Afghan government and the rise of the Taliban. Governments across the world were faced with a very difficult question. Should we accept the new Taliban government or isolate them? The answer to that question has not been simple, and the world has mostly chosen to wait, watch, and remain silent on official recognition.
Yes, Julia. When the Taliban took control of Kabul in 2021, there was no immediate wave of recognition from any major countries. In fact, most Western nations, including the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and Canada, strongly rejected the idea of recognizing the Taliban as the legitimate government of Afghanistan. They said that official recognition would only come if the Taliban showed clear progress on human rights, especially the rights of women and minorities.
These countries also worried that recognizing the Taliban would send a dangerous message to other armed groups around the world. It could look like violence and military takeovers were acceptable paths to power. So they took a different approach. While they did not recognize the Taliban, they still talked to them. They kept open lines of communication in order to help deliver humanitarian aid, protect civilians, and manage evacuations of foreign citizens and Afghan allies.
That's right. The United Nations also chose not to recognize the Taliban as the official government. The Taliban have asked the UN to give their representatives a seat, but the UN has refused so far. Instead, the UN has worked through special missions and agencies to provide emergency food, healthcare, and education to the Afghan people, without giving full political recognition to the Taliban. It's a careful balance between helping the people and avoiding support for the regime.
Countries like Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, China, and Iran have also engaged with the Taliban, but their approach has been more focused on regional interests. For example, Qatar played a key role in hosting peace talks and still maintains a close diplomatic relationship. China has kept its embassy open in Kabul and has called for engagement with the Taliban, especially for economic and security reasons. But none of these countries officially recognize the Taliban as a legitimate government, until now.
And that brings us to a very important point. What does it actually mean to recognize a government? In international relations, recognition is more than just saying, "We accept you." It means opening embassies, signing treaties, exchanging ambassadors, and giving the green light for full diplomatic and economic relations. It means treating that government as the true and lawful authority of the country it controls. Recognition can unlock aid, investments, and international support.
But recognition also comes with responsibility. It means the recognizing country is willing to deal directly with the leaders in power. It can also mean accepting the actions of that government as official. That's why many countries have refused to recognize the Taliban. They don't want to be seen as supporting a group that restricts women's rights, suppresses freedom of speech, and has a history of harboring terrorists. These are serious concerns that cannot be ignored.
The United States, for example, has made it very clear that it will not recognize the Taliban unless there are major changes. American officials have said they want to see progress on forming an inclusive government, allowing girls to go to school, protecting human rights, and breaking ties with terrorist organizations. Until then, the U.S. continues to impose sanctions and has frozen billions of dollars in Afghan funds that are held in foreign banks.
European countries have taken a similar stance. They have demanded clear steps toward democracy, equal rights for women, and protection of journalists and activists. Many European leaders have also expressed concern about Afghanistan becoming a base for extremist groups again. Without strong guarantees from the Taliban, they have refused to offer recognition or restart development aid that was once the backbone of Afghanistan's economy.
Even Muslim-majority countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Indonesia have avoided recognition. While they may share cultural and religious ties with Afghanistan, they are also cautious. They want to avoid international criticism and maintain their own global image. These countries have focused more on providing humanitarian assistance through international channels, rather than making direct deals with the Taliban government.
So for the last 2 years, the global response has mostly been one of non-recognition, limited communication, and careful humanitarian support. The Taliban remain in control of Afghanistan, but they have not received the kind of international acceptance that would give them full access to global trade, foreign investments, or seats at major international meetings. They are, in many ways, politically isolated, even though they are physically in control.
But that isolation is starting to change. With Russia becoming the first major power to officially recognize the Taliban, the rules of the game might be changing. This move by Moscow could open the door for other countries to follow. It could also put pressure on the West to rethink its approach. In the next section, we'll talk about Russia's exact announcement, what they said, how they said it, and why this moment is causing such a big shock around the world.
Yes, and we'll also explore the details of Russia's relationship with the Taliban over the last few years. This didn't happen suddenly. Russia has been preparing for this move for a while, and it's important to understand the background before we judge their decision. So stay with us, dear listeners, and we'll take a closer look at Russia's surprising step in the next part of this episode.
Now that we've talked about how the world has responded with silence or caution for the past 2 years, let's shift our focus to the country that just shocked the world, Russia. After a long period of quiet and strategic engagement, Russia has officially recognized the Taliban government in Afghanistan. This announcement did not come from a rumor or an unofficial statement. It came directly from top officials in Moscow, and the world immediately took notice.
That's right, Adam. The Russian government confirmed through its foreign ministry that it has officially recognized the Taliban as the legitimate government of Afghanistan. This statement was made publicly, and it included language that was very clear. Russian officials said they had decided to remove the Taliban from their list of banned organizations, which is a major legal and diplomatic step. This means they now see the Taliban not as a terrorist group, but as the official leadership of a sovereign state.
This move by Russia is both symbolic and practical. On one hand, it sends a message that Russia now views the Taliban as a legitimate partner in international affairs. On the other hand, it also allows Russia to deepen political, economic, and security ties with Afghanistan. By removing the Taliban from its list of extremist groups, Russia is also opening the door for formal trade agreements, infrastructure projects, and diplomatic meetings between the two governments.
And it's important to note that Russia didn't make this decision overnight. Russia has kept its embassy open in Kabul since 2021, and it has held multiple meetings with Taliban officials over the past few years. Russian diplomats have met Taliban leaders both in Afghanistan and in Moscow, and both sides have discussed issues like security, regional stability, drug trafficking, and trade. This recognition is the result of a long, calculated diplomatic strategy, not a sudden or emotional decision.
The Russian Foreign Ministry also emphasized that they were making this move for the sake of stability in the region. Russian officials said they believe that engaging with the Taliban government is better than isolating it. They argue that by recognizing the Taliban, they can encourage more responsible governance, improve communication, and help prevent Afghanistan from becoming a center of terrorism or chaos that could affect nearby countries, including some that are close Russian allies.
From a strategic perspective, this recognition could help Russia gain more influence in Central Asia, especially at a time when its relationships with the West are deeply strained. After being cut off from many Western economies because of the war in Ukraine, Russia is turning to new partners and trying to build a new world order, one that is less dependent on the United States and Europe. Recognizing the Taliban might be one part of this new geopolitical direction.
Also, this move allows Russia to position itself as a leader among countries that want to take a different approach to Afghanistan. While the West continues to demand human rights and democratic reforms, Russia is offering recognition without those conditions. This could appeal to other countries that are tired of waiting or that see potential economic opportunities in Afghanistan's natural resources, trade routes, or geographic location at the crossroads of Asia.
But of course, this recognition has also brought criticism. Human rights organizations around the world have said that Russia is rewarding a regime that continues to limit freedoms for women and girls, punish dissent, and rule through fear and religious control. Critics argue that by recognizing the Taliban without demanding change, Russia is giving up its moral responsibility and legitimizing a government that still denies basic rights to millions of its people.
The timing of the announcement is also interesting. Some experts believe that Russia wanted to make this move before any other powerful country did. By being the first, Russia is showing that it is not afraid to challenge the Western narrative and act independently. Others say that this recognition is part of a larger Russian plan to increase its presence in Afghanistan's economy, especially in mining, construction, and transport, and to form security alliances to fight regional terrorism.
And here's something else to consider. The Taliban have welcomed Russia's recognition with open arms. They released statements thanking Russia and calling it a brave and honest decision. Taliban officials say they are ready to work closely with Russia on trade, infrastructure, and diplomacy. They believe this recognition proves that the world is slowly beginning to accept them as the true rulers of Afghanistan, even if many countries still hesitate to say so out loud.
This situation now places pressure on other countries, especially in the region. Countries like Iran, China, Pakistan, and even some Central Asian nations might now feel that it's safe, or even necessary, to follow Russia's lead. If they do, the Taliban government could slowly become more accepted across the region, even if the West continues to resist. This could shift the balance of power in the region and weaken the influence of countries like the United States and European powers.
So, to summarize this section, Russia has officially recognized the Taliban government in Afghanistan by removing them from its list of banned organizations. This recognition is a clear political message, a strategic move, and possibly the beginning of a new phase in international relations. Russia is saying, we are ready to deal with the world in our own way, with our own rules, and with our own partners, even if they are not accepted by the West.
In the next section, we'll explore why Russia made this decision now. Why didn't they do it 2 years ago? What has changed? What are Russia's goals in Afghanistan? And how could this recognition help Russia both economically and politically in the current world climate? We'll break it down step by step, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more.
Now that we understand what Russia officially announced and how it shocked the international community, it's time to ask a very important question. Why did Russia decide to recognize the Taliban now, in 2025, after more than 2 years of silence? What changed between 2021 and today that made Russia take such a bold and controversial step? Let's look at the possible reasons, both political and strategic, behind this major decision.
One of the first reasons that many analysts suggest is regional security. Russia has always been concerned about the stability of countries that are close to its borders. Afghanistan is not far from former Soviet republics like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, all of which share deep security, economic, and cultural ties with Russia. Russia wants to prevent any violence or terrorist threats from crossing over into these Central Asian countries, which it still sees as part of its sphere of influence.
From Russia's perspective, engaging with the Taliban might be the best way to keep the region calm. Instead of treating the Taliban as enemies or outsiders, Russia may believe it's smarter to bring them into official diplomatic relationships. That way, they can have more control, share intelligence, and try to prevent Afghanistan from becoming a base for terrorist groups that might threaten Russia or its allies. In this way, recognition becomes a tool for regional security.
Another important factor is economic opportunity. Afghanistan is a country that holds massive reserves of untapped natural resources, including copper, iron, lithium, and rare earth minerals, resources that are extremely valuable in today's global economy. As the world shifts toward electric vehicles and high-tech industries, minerals like lithium are in very high demand. Russia may be positioning itself to access these resources before Western companies or China do.
Yes, and while the Western world continues to isolate the Taliban, Russia sees a chance to move in and make deals. They can offer investments, build infrastructure, and gain mining contracts in exchange for political support. This type of arrangement gives the Taliban the legitimacy they want and gives Russia valuable resources and influence. It's a win-win for both sides, at least on the surface, though it comes with many ethical and human rights concerns as well.
Let's also look at the geopolitical situation. Over the past few years, Russia has become more isolated from the West, especially after its invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Because of sanctions, bans, and political pressure, Russia has been forced to build new alliances and find new partners. Recognizing the Taliban is one way to show that Russia is not waiting for Western approval anymore. It's a message that says, We will build our own partnerships with or without the West.
This fits into Russia's larger goal of creating a multipolar world. A world where power is shared between different countries, not just dominated by the United States and Europe. By recognizing the Taliban, Russia shows it is willing to break the traditional rules of international diplomacy and challenge the decisions of Western nations. It becomes a leader for countries that want alternatives to Western influence, especially in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East.
There's also the competition with China to consider. China has been quietly building its influence in Afghanistan through investments, security talks, and trade. China wants to include Afghanistan in its Belt and Road Initiative, a global infrastructure project designed to connect Asia, Europe, and Africa through roads, railways, and ports. By recognizing the Taliban first, Russia may be trying to stay one step ahead of China and claim its own space in Afghanistan's future.
At the same time, this move can be seen as an act of defiance against the United States. Russia knows that the US has spent years trying to defeat the Taliban and build a democratic government in Afghanistan. That effort failed in 2021. Now, by recognizing the Taliban, Russia is showing the world that it does not agree with the US strategy and is ready to take a different path. It's not just about Afghanistan. It's about showing strength and independence on the world stage.
And finally, Russia may also believe that no other option exists. The Taliban control the entire country. They are not facing any real opposition. There is no second government waiting to take over. For Russia, recognizing the Taliban might just be a recognition of reality. Whether we like it or not, they are the ones in power, and ignoring them won't make them disappear. Some diplomats argue that engaging with the Taliban may actually give more influence over their decisions.
So to sum up, the reasons behind Russia's decision are complex and connected to many different goals. Russia wants to protect its borders, gain access to natural resources, challenge Western power, stay ahead of China, and show leadership in a new global order. And by recognizing the Taliban, it sends a powerful message that it's willing to go its own way, even if the rest of the world is not ready to follow.
Of course, there are risks. This decision could backfire if the Taliban fail to govern responsibly, or if terrorist groups grow stronger again inside Afghanistan. Russia could face criticism and isolation from the West, and it may find that the Taliban are not reliable partners in the long term. But for now, the Russian government seems to believe that the rewards are worth the risk.
In the next section, we'll explore exactly how the rest of the world has responded to Russia's recognition. What did the US say? How did Europe react? What about China, Iran, and Pakistan? And what are other countries likely to do next? Will they follow Russia's lead, or will they continue to wait and see? Stay with us as we look at the global response to this surprising and historic decision.
So far, we've discussed what Russia announced, how it recognized the Taliban, and why this decision was made at this particular moment. But now, it's time to take a close look at how the world reacted to this surprising move. When a major world power like Russia makes such a bold step, the global community cannot ignore it. Governments, diplomats, media outlets, and analysts from every continent responded quickly, and the reactions were as different as the countries themselves.
Let's start with the United States, which played the most significant role in Afghanistan for 2 decades. After Russia made its announcement, US officials were quick to respond. A spokesperson from the US State Department said that Washington was deeply concerned about the decision and repeated that the US will not recognize the Taliban until it meets specific conditions. These include allowing girls to return to school, protecting women's rights, and forming an inclusive government.
The US also warned that Russia's decision could send the wrong message, that violent takeovers can lead to international legitimacy. The American response made it clear that for now, the United States will not follow Russia's path. Instead, it will continue to support the Afghan people through humanitarian aid, without giving any official recognition to the Taliban government, and they encouraged other countries to do the same until clear progress is made on human rights.
European countries echoed this message. The European Union issued a joint statement saying that recognition of the Taliban is premature and dangerous. Germany, France, Italy, and Spain all expressed concern that Russia's move could weaken the international position on demanding accountability from the Taliban. Leaders in Brussels insisted that human rights must come before politics, and that no legitimate government can be formed while women are excluded from society.
Britain's Foreign Secretary also made a strong statement. He said that Russia's decision was irresponsible and could increase instability in the region. The UK government emphasized that it would not recognize any regime that denies basic freedoms to its people. Many European officials also worried that Russia's recognition could create new refugee flows, especially if it encourages the Taliban to tighten control and increase repression inside Afghanistan.
But the reactions were not all negative. Some countries took a more neutral or even supportive tone. China, for example, did not criticize Russia. Instead, Chinese officials said that engagement with the Taliban is necessary and that every country has the right to choose its own diplomatic path. China itself has kept its embassy in Kabul open and has held multiple talks with Taliban leaders, especially on economic and security issues. However, China has not yet offered official recognition.
Pakistan's reaction was also interesting. For many years, Pakistan was accused of secretly supporting the Taliban while publicly supporting the former Afghan government. After Russia's recognition, Pakistan said that it would observe the situation and continue working for regional peace. While the Pakistani government did not immediately follow Russia's example, some officials and political analysts in Islamabad said it might only be a matter of time before Pakistan does the same.
Iran, which shares a long border with Afghanistan, also responded cautiously. While the Iranian government has criticized the Taliban in the past, especially for mistreating Shia minorities, it has also worked with them on border security and trade. Iranian leaders did not strongly oppose Russia's decision, but instead said they will wait and judge the Taliban based on future actions. Like many countries, Iran appears to be walking a careful line between principle and strategy.
In Central Asia, reactions were more mixed. Countries like Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan have been engaging with the Taliban for years, mainly to keep their borders secure and ensure trade routes remain open. These countries did not criticize Russia's decision and may even welcome it. Tajikistan, however, has always had a tense relationship with the Taliban due to ethnic differences and past conflicts, so its reaction was colder and more cautious.
The Arab world also responded with quiet observation. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar have all had connections with the Taliban in the past, especially during the 1990s. Qatar hosted the peace talks between the US and the Taliban, and its leaders said that dialogue is still the best way forward. However, none of these countries have yet recognized the Taliban officially, and they have not announced any changes in their policies after Russia's move.
In Africa and Latin America, most governments stayed silent, likely because Afghanistan is not directly linked to their political or economic interests. However, in countries that follow Russian foreign policy closely, such as Syria, Belarus, and Venezuela, there were some supportive comments. These governments praised Russia for respecting Afghan sovereignty and challenging Western domination. Again, these comments were symbolic more than strategic.
The United Nations also issued a statement after Russia's announcement. The UN made it clear that its position has not changed. The organization still does not recognize the Taliban government and continues to work through special humanitarian missions. UN officials warned that recognition without demands for human rights could harm efforts to improve life for the Afghan people. The UN also urged all countries to focus on the safety and well-being of women, children, and minority communities.
Human rights groups around the world were especially critical of Russia's recognition. Organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch called the decision dangerous and said it would reward repression. They pointed to the continued closure of girls' schools, the lack of press freedom, and the punishment of dissent as signs that the Taliban have not changed. These groups worry that Russia's move will make it harder to pressure the Taliban to reform.
At the same time, there are others who believe that recognition may open new doors. Some international relations experts argue that talking with the Taliban directly, as equals, might give the world more influence over their behavior. They say isolation hasn't worked, and that recognition, if combined with firm expectations, might create change. This is a minority view, but it is growing, especially among countries that want stability more than ideals.
So what we see here is a divided world. Some countries, especially in the West, strongly oppose Russia's move and are worried it sets a bad example. Others are more cautious and waiting to see what happens next. And a few are quietly considering whether they too should take the same step. Russia has made the first move, but now the big question is, who will follow?
And in the next section, we'll look at what this all means for the people of Afghanistan. How will this recognition impact daily life for ordinary Afghans? Will it improve their economy? Will it bring new jobs, education, and healthcare? Or will it make life worse by giving more power to a strict regime? Stay with us as we explore the human side of this global decision.
So far, we have talked a lot about the politics, the international decisions, and the strategies behind Russia's recognition of the Taliban. But what about the people who live in Afghanistan? The millions of women, men, and children whose lives are directly affected by these changes. How will Russia's move impact their daily lives, their safety, their jobs, and their dreams for the future?
This is the most important question, Adam. Afghanistan is a country rich in culture and history, but it has faced many hardships over the past decades. Since the Taliban returned to power in 2021, ordinary Afghans have experienced a mix of fear, hope, confusion, and resilience. On one hand, some people welcome the Taliban's promises of peace after years of war. On the other hand, many live in fear of strict rules, repression, and a lack of basic freedoms.
Economically, Afghanistan is in a very difficult position. Since foreign aid stopped and international banks froze Afghan assets, many government services have collapsed. Hospitals struggle to operate. Teachers are unpaid. Food prices have risen sharply. Without official recognition from most countries, Afghanistan finds it very hard to get international loans, investments, or access to global markets. Russia's recognition might open some economic doors, but it's unclear how much help it will bring immediately.
Women and girls are the most affected group. Before 2001, under the Taliban's first rule, women were denied education, work, and freedom of movement. After 2021, many of those restrictions returned. Girls over the age of 12 have been banned from secondary school, and women are discouraged or forbidden from working outside the home in many areas. Women's rights activists and teachers have been arrested or forced to hide. Russia's recognition does not change these realities overnight.
For many Afghans, life has become a daily struggle. People often face shortages of food, water, and electricity. Many families have members who fled the country as refugees or are trying to do so. Mental health problems are common, but there are few resources to help. The health system is fragile, and the country remains vulnerable to natural disasters like droughts and floods. The Taliban's strict laws and harsh punishments add another layer of difficulty to everyday life.
At the same time, some Afghans hope that official recognition by a major power like Russia could bring more stability. Recognition could mean more foreign investment, infrastructure projects, and job opportunities. It could lead to the reopening of banks and increased access to international markets. However, these benefits depend heavily on whether the Taliban improve governance and ease restrictions on women and minorities.
Human rights organizations warn that without real reforms, recognition might give the Taliban more power without making life better for most Afghans. They fear that this could legitimize abuses and allow the government to continue ignoring international demands. Aid workers also say that the focus should remain on helping the people directly through humanitarian programs, regardless of politics.
Another important issue is education. Many young people are eager to learn and build a future, but the Taliban's ban on girls' secondary education blocks a large part of the population from reaching their potential. The closure of universities to women is also a major setback. Without education, Afghanistan risks losing a generation of skilled workers and professionals, which will hurt the country's long-term development.
In rural areas, the situation can be even worse. Access to healthcare, education, and economic opportunities is limited even in the best of times. With the current political isolation, many aid organizations have had to reduce or end their programs. This leaves millions of people without basic services. While some communities support the Taliban, others resist quietly or even openly. Conflict and insecurity continue in some regions.
Finally, there is the question of freedom and expression. Journalists, activists, and minority groups face harsh repression. Media outlets have been shut down and reporters jailed or forced into exile. Afghanistan's ethnic and religious minorities, such as the Hazara community, have long faced discrimination and violence. Recognition by Russia may not change these realities, but it could make it harder for international actors to pressure the Taliban to protect vulnerable groups.
In summary, Russia's recognition is a complex and double-edged sword for the Afghan people. It might open some economic and diplomatic doors, but it also risks strengthening a government that continues to restrict freedoms and deny basic rights. The path forward for Afghanistan remains uncertain, and much depends on whether the Taliban choose to change their policies or maintain their hardline rule.
In our next section, we will explore what the future might hold for Afghanistan and the region. What challenges and opportunities lie ahead? How might other countries respond in the coming months? And what role can the international community play to support peace, stability, and human rights? Stay with us for this important discussion.
Now that we've explored how the world responded to Russia's recognition of the Taliban and how this decision affects the Afghan people, we must turn our attention to the future. What does all of this mean for Afghanistan in the long run? How could this recognition reshape not only the lives of Afghan citizens, but also the balance of power in South and Central Asia? And what should the world expect in the months and years ahead?
These are not easy questions, but they are very important. One of the biggest unknowns right now is whether Russia's recognition will encourage other countries to follow. If more regional powers like China, Iran, Pakistan, and even some Central Asian countries decide to recognize the Taliban, this could create a new diplomatic reality. The Taliban would still be isolated from the West, but they would gain a support system that could help them survive politically and economically.
Yes, and if countries like China or Iran follow Russia's lead, Afghanistan could become part of a new regional alliance, perhaps an economic and political network outside of Western influence. Some experts believe the country could eventually join regional organizations such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which includes Russia, China, and Central Asian states. This would give the Taliban more global visibility and legitimacy, even without support from the United Nations or the US.
But all of this depends on the Taliban's behavior moving forward. If they continue to restrict women's rights, suppress dissent, and govern with fear, many countries will hesitate to recognize them, no matter what Russia does. There are powerful voices in the Muslim world, including scholars, community leaders, and governments, who believe that Islam supports education, equality, and justice. These voices are calling on the Taliban to open schools for girls and form a more inclusive government.
So one possible future is that Russia's recognition becomes a turning point, a signal to the Taliban that if they make reforms, more countries might follow. In this scenario, Afghanistan could slowly reconnect with the global economy, foreign embassies might reopen, aid could return, and the people might experience a better standard of living. But this depends on serious changes from the Taliban, changes that have not yet been seen in a meaningful way.
Another possible future is more troubling. If the Taliban refuse to change and more governments still decide to recognize them anyway, without demanding human rights improvements, then there is a risk that repression becomes permanent. In this future, the Taliban gain power and resources without accountability. The lives of Afghan women, minorities, journalists, and activists could become even harder. It would be a future of recognition without reform.
And there's also the possibility that Russia's move creates division among world powers. The West could harden its stance, increasing sanctions and cutting ties with countries that engage with the Taliban. This might lead to more isolation, more suffering for Afghan civilians, and greater tension between global powers. Afghanistan could once again become a battleground, not of bullets and bombs, but of political influence between East and West.
Regionally, there are many risks and challenges ahead. Border security is a major concern. If Afghanistan becomes a safe haven for extremist groups, neighboring countries will respond with military force or close their borders. Trade routes could be blocked, and humanitarian aid might be delayed. Refugees might flee once again, especially if the Taliban increase repression. The future of the region depends heavily on peace and cooperation, but that requires trust, and trust is still lacking.
Let's not forget the Afghan economy. Without large-scale investment, jobs, and development, the country will remain one of the poorest in the world. Russia may offer some support, but Afghanistan needs a lot more. Roads, hospitals, schools, banks, and agriculture all need rebuilding. With the right policies and international support, Afghanistan could become self-reliant one day. But that dream requires a stable government, skilled people, and partnerships based on mutual respect.
Another key factor is the youth. Afghanistan has one of the youngest populations in the world. Millions of children and teenagers have never known peace or prosperity. They dream of education, travel, careers, and freedom. Whether these young Afghans will be allowed to fulfill their potential depends on the decisions made today, by their leaders and by the global community. Investing in them is investing in Afghanistan's future.
So, what does the world need to do now? Many experts say that the global community should not just ignore Afghanistan or leave it in isolation. They argue that engagement, with conditions, may be more effective than silence. This means talking to the Taliban, but also standing firm on human rights. It means offering aid to the Afghan people without helping the regime abuse power. It's a careful balance, but one that could lead to better outcomes.
At the same time, there's a need for diplomacy, not just confrontation. Afghanistan has been a victim of many foreign wars and political games. Its people have suffered more than enough. The future should be shaped not just by big powers like Russia, China, or the US, but by Afghans themselves. Listening to Afghan voices, especially those of women, youth, and civil society, should be at the center of any plan for peace and progress.
And now, we are at a very sensitive moment in history. Russia's recognition has opened a door, but where that door leads is still unclear. Will it lead to deeper isolation or international inclusion? Will it bring hope or fear? Opportunity or oppression? Only time will tell. But what's certain is that the decisions made today, by governments, by the Taliban, and by the international community, will shape Afghanistan's future for decades to come.
In the final section of this podcast, we'll bring together everything we've discussed. We'll summarize the key points, reflect on the big questions, and share a message of hope, unity, and responsibility for the future. Stay with us as we wrap up this powerful and emotional episode.
Dear listeners, we've now reached the final part of today's episode, and what a journey it has been. We've traveled through history, diplomacy, politics, and human experience to understand a global event that is both controversial and historic. Russia's decision to officially recognize the Taliban has shaken the world. And now, the big question remains: what happens next? As we wrap up this episode, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned and what it all means.
This podcast wasn't just about a news headline. It was about people. Real people. People who live in cities, villages, and refugee camps. People who dream of education, opportunity, and peace. People who fear bombs, repression, and hunger. Behind every political decision, there are human stories. And today, we tried to give those stories a voice. Afghanistan is not just a country. It is a home to millions of brave and resilient people who have suffered more than most of us can imagine.
We started this journey by asking why Russia would take such a bold step. We explored their motivations: regional security, economic opportunity, political strategy, and defiance of Western influence. We saw that this recognition is not just about Afghanistan. It's about a changing world order, a growing divide between East and West, and a global struggle over values, power, and influence. Russia's move challenges the idea that only the West can decide who is legitimate and who is not.
But as we discussed, recognition also comes with responsibility. When a country like Russia legitimizes a regime like the Taliban, it must also use its voice to promote peace, rights, and justice. Recognition cannot be blind. It cannot ignore the voices of Afghan women and children. It cannot silence the cries of journalists, teachers, and activists who want nothing more than a better life for their country. Recognition must be tied to progress, or it risks becoming a betrayal.
We also looked at how the world reacted. From strong Western condemnation to cautious regional observation, it's clear that the global community is still deeply divided. Some fear that this move could legitimize repression. Others see it as a possible doorway to dialogue and stability. What's important is that countries must act with wisdom, humanity, and long-term vision. We cannot allow short-term politics to destroy the hope of a peaceful and inclusive Afghanistan.
Most importantly, we talked about what this decision means for the Afghan people, for the mother trying to feed her children, for the girl who dreams of going to school, for the young man who wants to work, build, and contribute, for the refugee longing to return home. These people don't care about global power games. They care about survival, dignity, and the future. Every decision made in Moscow, Washington, Beijing, or Kabul will shape their lives.
To the leaders of the world, whether in East or West, we say this: put people first. Let your strategies be guided by compassion. Let your diplomacy be shaped by truth. Let your alliances be based on justice. Afghanistan does not need another era of being used as a pawn in great power politics. It needs honest friendship, respectful cooperation, and meaningful investment in peace. Let us not repeat the mistakes of the past.
And to the Afghan people listening to this podcast, whether you're in Kabul, Herat, Kandahar, or abroad, we send our deepest respect and love. Your strength inspires the world. Your patience, your kindness, and your ability to hope even in the darkest times show us what true courage looks like. You are not forgotten. Your voices matter. Your stories matter. And one day we believe your dreams will come true, because hope is more powerful than fear.
To our global listeners, we ask, what kind of world do you want to live in? A world where power decides truth? Or a world where truth challenges power? A world where we isolate those who are different? Or a world where we find new ways to connect, learn, and grow? The future is not yet written, and each of us plays a part in shaping it. Whether you're a student, teacher, worker, leader, or simply someone who cares, your awareness makes a difference.
So, dear listeners, Thank you for joining us on this deep and meaningful journey. If you learned something new today, or if this episode made you think differently, please like this video and subscribe to the English Globe. We'd love to hear your opinions. What do you think about Russia's recognition of the Taliban? Do you agree or disagree? And where are you listening from? Let us know in the comments below. We always enjoy hearing your thoughts.
And remember, English is not just a language, it's a bridge to the world. Through English, you can understand global events, connect with others, and express yourself with confidence. That's what this channel is about, helping you grow, think, and communicate through real-world topics. We're proud to be with you on this learning journey.
We'll be back soon with another episode about important global events, international relations, and English learning. Until then, take care, stay curious, and keep asking questions. The world is changing every day, and together we'll keep exploring it one story at a time.
Goodbye, everyone, and thank you for listening to the English Globe. Stay safe, stay strong, and keep learning. See you next time.